Hello, my name is Juliana Santos, and I will present my paper entitled Advocacy and the Role of Human Rights Organizations in the Brazilian Legislative Branch, Rede, Justiça Criminal Campaigns. The objective of this study was to understand from the analysis of the work of a Brazilian network of NGOs, how advocacy on human rights issues is developed to defend causes with the legislative branch, identifying their contributions and its effectiveness. Ultimately, the idea of this work is to reflect on how advocacy as a public relations activity reinforces citizen participation in the political system. To respond to the objective of this study, two specific objectives were defined. One, to describe the advocacy strategies and tactics used in the campaigns, and two, to measure the effects of the campaigns on the legislative debate to verify the consonance and harmony with the organization's objectives. For this investigation, two campaigns from the NGOs network Rede, Justiça Criminal were selected. They are For the End of the Invasive Bar Search and Prison is Not Justice. The first was developed from April to December 2014, and the second from June to December 2017. Regarding the theoretical framework, the investigation is in the scientific field of public relations, and it's based on the concept of advocacy. And the results found were, in the two advocacy campaigns analyzed, no legislative changes were achieved. That is, there was no result in terms of legislation. However, a certain progress occurred in the debate as well in the stage of processing draft bills on which the campaigns focus. The purpose of advocacy is to influence decision makers, which occur in both campaigns. The influence of the work of the Rede Justiça Criminal was observed in decision-making stages of the legislative process. The first specific objective of this paper was dedicated to describe the strategies and tactics of advocacy used by campaigns in the legislative branch. The following are observed: the mapping of intellectuals in parliaments, the testimony of Rede Justiça Criminal specialists in public hearings, direct advocacy, which means meetings with parliamentarians, events and interventions that may occur in parliaments. The second specific objective was to try measuring the effects of the campaigns on the legislative debate, to verify the consonance and harmony with fulfilling the goals of the organization. On all occasions, when parliamentarians mentioned the campaigns in debates, reports, or in their votes, they did so in a positive way. Therefore, their mentions are always aligned with the campaign's objectives. Most of these mentions have shown a technical alignment of deputies and senators with the analysis made by Rede Justiça Criminal. In terms of effectiveness, which is considered as the production of legislative change, this study was not observed any significant change. Even so, one can observe the effectiveness in introducing the subject on the legislative agenda and in raising awareness among policymakers. Therefore, it's possible to conclude that these results favor the strengthening of the democratic environment, since it has increased the power and influence of civil society in decision-making within the legislative sphere. Finally, this work allowed to conclude that advocacy is one of the main public relations tools for increasing civil society participation in political decisions. Using this tool is a challenging and necessary job. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Andreia Soares and I'm very happy to be here in this MARPE conference. In 2019, I participated as a master's student in the MARPE Intensive Study Program about public, corporate and civic diplomacy. So it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to engage again with MARPE community. Well, I'm going to start sharing my screen. And as you can see, my paper is entitled Strategic Communication and Environmental Issues Frameworks in Organizations' Social Responsibility Policies, the Secil Group study case. Well, in the cement industry, it's not uncommon to have the environment in the center of the corporate social responsibility. And why is that? If we think about a triple bottom line, the 3 Ps, we see that the industry contributes a lot to profit, the economic bullet point in this slide, people, the social bullet point, but when it comes to planet, we see the environment, we see that it generates waste, emits a lot of CO2 and compromises biodiversity due to its quarry activities. So the question that came in our mind was, but these organizations, they put environment in the center of the CSR policies in a voluntary basis, or they do it forced by regulatory measures? To answer that, we try to compare the narratives, the company's narratives to the regulatory narratives. And here in this paper, we do a study case regarding Secil Group, that is a Portuguese cement group with 90 years old, and it's present in 8 countries. The main objective of this study was to perceive the highlighted frameworks presence in international environmental regulatory measures narrative in the Secil Group social responsibility policy. To do that, we saw the frameworks highlighted by Secil Sustainability Report and compare them with the international and sectorial agreements on climate change highlighted frameworks. Here are the main concepts we used in this paper. As we are talking about narrative, it's important to talk about strategic communication. That is the intentional co-creation of meanings that aims to fulfill an organization's mission and objectives. We also use the CSR and sustainability concepts, and we know there is a confusion between them. For us, CSR are the policies, practices, and resources adopted by organizations to maximize long-term economic benefits while taking care of social well-being and sustainable environment development. And here in this paper, we consider sustainability as one of the 4 CSR elements, besides act as a corporate citizen, obtain the license to operate and the reputation. And the theory framework of this paper is the framing theory. This theory was first used by mass communication, but also started to be used in strategic communication as it involves select and salience of aspects to promote a definition of a problem, to have an interpretation, to do a more evaluation, or to give a recommendation. Hallahan presented 7 models of frameworks, and here in this paper we consider the attributes model, that is, highlight some characteristics at the expense of others to influence. And here is that what we think that international and sectorial agreements try to do. They try to use some arguments to influence on the importance of climate change. To find the frameworks most highlighted in the analysis corpus, we use the Wiemeyer and Haas framing model. as the categories to look for. Those categories were created to the concept of transparency, and here we use them to climate change. And the categories are ethical, efficiency and effectiveness, communication and relations, and law and regulations, and financial. To characterize the Secil Sustainability Report, we used document analysis, and to find the most highlighted frameworks in Secil Sustainability Report and in the international and sectorial agreements, we used qualitative content analysis. This was our analysis corpus. The first is the Secil Sustainability Report 2018-2019, the most recent. The second one, the sectorial agreements, we choose the two which Secil is a member, the GCCA, Global Cement and Concrete Association, in which we chose the Climate Ambition Statement, and the CM Bureau, the European Cement Association, in which we chose the Roadmap for Carbon Neutrality in 2050. The third one were the international agreements, and then we analyzed 3 of United Nations agreements. The first, 1992 United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the 1998 Kyoto Protocol, and 2015 Paris Agreement. These 3 are considered the milestones for climate change. The fourth document is the 2019 European Green Deal, that is the European Union response for climate change. The first surprise of our analysis and the first thing we saw is that all model frameworks were used by our corpus. So the first thing, 4 of the 5 frameworks were used in all documents. The ethical one, the efficiency and effectiveness one, the communication and regulations one, and the law and the regulation one. The only one that was not present in all corpus was the financial one, that was just present in United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and also in the Secil Group Sustainability Report. As we had the presence of all categories, we tried to find subframes for us to be able to compare the subframes and look for the alignment of the Secil Group Sustainability Report. Well, the first conclusion is that the climate change is not an ethical matter, is not a relations matter or law or efficiency, but it's a matter of all them together. The international and sectorial agreements on climate change and the Secil Sustainability Report, they all broadly frame the environmental issue using different approaches as a justification to mitigate climate. The second conclusion is that the financial is the only frame not used by all, but just by UNFCCC and Secil Sustainability Report. We think that happened because the UNFCCC was the kickoff of this global commitment, on climate change, and was necessary at that point of time to clearly emphasize that the financial issue would not be forgotten, that to mitigate the climate change, it was important to have economic development as well. The Secil Sustainability Report also highlights the financial frame, and we conclude that it's because it's a company that just recently is looking to the environment and sustainability issues, and it's still a company focused on financial. The third conclusion is that although all the corpus highlights law and regulations, each type of corpus highlighted in a different way. So we divide them in 3 groups. The first one, the international agreements, say that law and regulations are necessary to force countries to work, to act, to mitigate climate change. The second group is the sectorial agreement. Well, they approach law and regulations saying that They need specific law and regulations to be able to reach carbon neutrality. And in the third group is the Secil Sustainability Report, that they simply shows their alignment with the Paris Agreement, with the European Green Deal, and they present themselves as a company that complies regulations. Well, with the subframes analysis, it was possible to conclude that Secil Sustainability Report is more aligned with sectorial agreements, but it's also aligned with international agreements. But as the sectorial are more specific agreements, it's easier to Secil Sustainability Report to fit in. And last but not least, we concluded that Meyer and Haas model created to frame transparency concept can also be applied to other themes, as we saw here in this paper with the climate change. Thank you very much.
Corporate diplomacy in a post-COVID world. There is currently an ongoing informed debate regarding the dimensions of globalization, or to be more accurate, whether today's globalization is in the process of transformation and decline. Global disorder, major political transformations, volatility, economy, generational change, or the digital screens causes a paradigm shift in the structure and the organization of business management. There is a common denominator in all these phenomena. The collective is everywhere, with a strong reorientation of institutional concerns and business towards social issues, participation models, and representation, as well as the future of the economic production and the identity individual. In this context, transformative leadership emerged, linked to that orientation towards the individual and the society, and the purpose in companies and organizations. Thus, the commitment to the environment is substance in three demands that are transforming social position that occupies the modern corporation. The first one is the transformative agenda at the C-level suite. The second point is the design of a narrative of the purpose. And third, there is a rapid response in social media and digital platforms. Based on 20 in-depth interviews to top international CEOs based in Spain, my research will shed light on how managers are leading and managing this post-COVID world. To consider the results, what we find is that CEOs are including geopolitics in their interest. One told me, we talk about the political analysis of markets and transnational investments, electoral processes, populism, and more tariffs and artificial barriers to trade. This political dimension is defined by the tension between authoritarian regimes and democracies. So, CEOs are thinking how to collaborate with these illiberal regimes that may boast short-term profits but can ruin prestige and reputation with consumers and institutional investors. Other issue really considered to CEO agenda is how to manage transparency. Within companies, the avalanche of data and digital information has affected with regard to volume, variety, and speed. So, one CEO told me, transparency is not an option nor even a decision that depends on the C-level board. Transparency is an issue that organizes decision-making and counteracts the tendency to hide bad practice. So, This transparency approach is a key element of the business environment, so transparency routines must be developed in order to manage public life. So, the findings have implications at 3 levels of management. The first is the management capability. So CEOs need to understand the new environment, and managers need to understand what is territory, what is uncertainty, what is political chaos, what is happening with transitions in a lot of countries. So my research is interesting to understand what is happening with CEOs in geopolitics and business, and in order to explain that in times of uncertainty, only training can contribute to the development of one's own defined criteria. So thank you very much for your time. I'm very happy to be here, and I hope we can discuss these results during the conference. Thanks.
So we came to the end of our videos, and it's now the time for opening the floor for question and answers. So I ask the audience if there is any questions that you would like to put to our presenters. Of course, just to remember you that Juliana is not with us, but I think that the presentations from Andreia Soares and Juan Manfredi were very interesting, and I hope that its contents could give you some insights and the will of putting them some questions, asking for some provocative, hopefully, clarifications. Is there anyone that would like to use the floor? Kaluka, please.
Yes, hi, hello. So thank you very much for all the presentations. I just had a question, I think, for both of present speakers, Andreia and Juan Luis. So my question would be regarding, connecting sustainability and sustainability reporting and transparency, and the role of sustainability reporting in climate corporate diplomacy. So my question would be, going ahead in a post-COVID world, as Juan Luis framed his presentation today, what do you think, for both of our presenters would be this question, what do you think would be the, the way that climate change diplomacy is more and more important, and how exactly sustainability reporting plays a role in the way that climate corporate diplomacy actually will progress or change or shift? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for your question. During my research, what I found is that CEOs are more and more interested in issues out of market. No? The right definition is non-market strategies. As far as the cost of capital is declining,
Hello,
and the money is on the markets, they are looking for opportunities in the near future. So they are not looking for the next quarter, but for the next 10 years. And it means also that there is a corporate opportunity in order to create a difference, in order to be different in the market. So sustainability will be the next revolution. First, because it is necessary. Okay, this is more ethics, if you want, or more moral aspects is relevant, but it's not the core of my research. But also because it will be relevant in terms of corporate differentiation. As far recently as you probably know, Shell and what was the other one? I can remember. Shell and the other big oil company will no longer continue investing in and non-sustainability markets. So if the market, I mean the capital markets like BlackRock or JP Morgan are sending signals that they are no longer interested in fossils, the companies are going to move faster and faster. The faster you move, the more advantage you receive. So I'm sure that that we will see in the next, I don't know, 2-3 years, quick action. Yes, thank you, Maddie. Thank you. I'm sure that these companies are going to move faster and faster. Also, if you go to particularly to Shell, they are sending bonds under the so-called green bonds, climate bonds, because they are looking for finance in the next 10 years, not in the next quarter. So that's more or less my answer. I don't know. Is that okay for you?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andreia. Could you please?
Sure. Good morning to all.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and thank you for questioning it for both of us, because I think our answers will be complementary. In my research, what I've found out that the climate change is something that regards to survival. As I study cement industry, and they just have a very objective goal. They have to produce concrete with zero carbon emissions until 2050. And this will change everything. The way the product, the relations they have, and more tools like a sustainability report are being mandatory for this kind of company to position themselves on the stock market, on with their clients and with their priorities publics. So it's a subject of surviving, looking for climate change. And here, for example, at Secil is present in 8 countries, and for now it's just a matter of the European country where Secil is present in because of Green Deal. But there is something that climate change will reach the other countries, Brazil, Tunisia, Lebanon. It's just a matter of time, you know. So this kind of industry have to take a very high look for climate change and start putting sustainability not in a showcase basis, but in a I don't know how to say that, but to put internally and to consider sustainability as a very critical issue they have to look for. Sorry, I don't know if I answer your question.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to someone else, but the organization is asking me to stop the session now because we need to keep our schedule. So we'll have a 2 minutes break and we'll be back immediately after for the next session.